The following is a paid program that is paid for by AARP of Michigan.
Today we're talking about something that's near and dear to everyone's heart, and that's our money. What about your money, not only today, but in its afterlife? Stay tuned and listen to what happens to your money once you're gone. We hear a lot about financial advisors and about your money and wills and estates. But what about your money's afterlife? After you're gone and your money's still around, who gets it? Do they pay taxes on it? There's no one better to talk about that than our two guests today. Thank you so much for being with us. Before we get into the nitty-gritty about financial advisor, what it is, and about our money, and I like that, our money's afterlife, Shannon, tell us, what is a financial advisor and what do they do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really evolved over the 30 years Henry and I have been doing it. It used to be really defining goals for clients. Today, it's probably more about implementation than anything else. It's we all know sometimes what we need to do, but whether or not we actually do it, especially from a financial perspective. So accountability is a big part of it. Not only defining the goals, but helping people get there financially.
How do you find a good one? Because it seems like everybody has advice on my finances, but how do you find a really certified good financial advisor?
Yeah, well,
what do you look for?
Well, you said the key. I think certifications are important, and there's a lot of them out there. So depending on your own personal situation, what certification is important to you. But I also believe that you have to be comfortable with the individual you're working with. Because if you don't feel that connection in that relationship, the certification isn't just enough. So I think sometimes you have to interview multiple to get to somebody that you're really comfortable with.
People have operated under the myth, some people, that financial advisors just take a big chunk of the money when they are planning your estate. That's not necessarily true anymore. There's percentages, and they certainly should, but there are some laws governing that. Is that not correct? How much they can charge you or what they can take out of it?
I think everybody should be charging a fair price. I think the hard part is how do you get that transparency of what a fair price is. And I think at the end of the day, you just need to ask those questions. How are you being compensated? And make sure that aligns with what you're comfortable paying.
So let's talk about the afterlife of their money. And I love that because people always talk about what they're going to have when they retire and if they have enough for their own financial security. And that's important. We really want to make certain that because people are living longer, and we want to make sure that they live and they have the kind of options that they need. But after you're gone and you've left what you think is money to others, do your heirs pay taxes on the money that you leave them? Or is there a way that they don't have to pay substantial taxes on that money? And what do you need to do?
So there's really two components to that. The first is having a proper estate plan in place.
Okay.
So that starts with making sure your wishes after your passing are clearly defined. And are you taking the appropriate steps to make sure that you're not caught in a situation where the state is deciding for you where your assets go?
Okay.
So a couple of those tools are having a will. So that defines what probate will do with things like your home or real property. The second is a trust. A trust is what extends your wishes past your life. So leaving it directly to your heirs, and then you get to define the manner in which they take those assets as well. So you can say you can get assets 5 years after I'm passed, or once you achieve or reach a certain age. Those would be a couple key components to making sure that your assets get to who you want and happen efficiently.
Now you mentioned two things. You mentioned a will and you mentioned a trust. How do you know which one is best for you?
Ask a lot of questions. A trust is really designed to be an extension past just your passing.
Okay.
So a trust can leave assets to your kids specifically for education, specifically at a certain age. So you can consume those assets, if you will, or leave those assets for a specific goal.
And just you have to go to probate with a trust?
A trust is specifically designed to avoid probate. A will is executed or administered by probate court. So for those folks that want to avoid probate, a trust is how you do that.
And do you have to have a certain amount of money in order to have a trust, or does it matter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. 'Cause that's a misperception I think that people have sometimes as
Correct. Yeah.
well. That they have to have thousands or millions of dollars in order to establish a trust in their estate.
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is how much control do you want? So your question about, who am I going to leave money to, how much, and when they get access, the trust will give you a lot more flexibility than a will.
So if I'm leaving money to my children, how much will they have to pay in taxes on that money? And how do they guard against that? Or do they have to pay taxes right away? How does that work?
So that would be, I think, also another common misnomer is, oh, I don't have any estate taxes, therefore I don't need a trust. Well, I know how I would have behaved at 18 years old if I were left a bunch of money. A trust is what allows the parents or the folks leaving the assets the ability to control when they can access them. So in and of itself, the rough number is about $13 million. If you have an estate less than $13 million, there are no estate taxes, okay? But there are income taxes on certain assets that would be left, like an IRA or a 401k.
The children would have to pay those taxes.
Correct.
And what if that child has like a student loan debt? Can they access or some kind of debt? Can debtors access the trust to get their money before the heir gets their money?
Provided the trust allows them to do that.
Oh.
So you as the donor would dictate what circumstances you would want assets to be accessed within that trust.
Okay.
So it could be for common provisions like health, education, maintenance, support. Those would be provisions typically where you would allow assets to be accessed.
Is it a good idea to designate exactly how you want that money, like a legacy gift, how you want it spent, like you mentioned education, or do you just leave it and let little Jane and Johnny figure it out on their own?
Most folks desire to put a few circumstances or stipulations around when
They know Jane and Johnny, right?
Absolutely. Well, and you're protecting your heirs from themselves,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So right now, about 70% of all distributions or all inheritances left by Americans to their heirs are consumed within a 2-year time frame.
Really?
And in about
2 years?
2/3 of those cases, most heirs are in a worse financial position than they were before they inherited it.
Wow.
Because when people inherit an asset, it's just the next item on the list that gets paid for. It's that home improvement they never could have got around to. It's fixing the car that they couldn't get to. It's maybe purchasing that next vehicle or taking the family on the vacation they always wanted to. And then it's a domino effect that ultimately ends up costing the heirs the chance to really set aside and save. So to your point, most folks say, I want to protect my kids from themselves because that's the natural progression of things.
That's depressing. 70%? I'm stuck there. 70% are worse off.
Well, and 2/3 of Americans die intestate, which means they die with no specific instructions left, which means the state is deciding.
It's getting better and better.
That's why it's so important
Yeah.
you're doing what you're doing now.
Yeah.
It's those little steps of education to help people, hey, take one step at a time and put your wishes in writing.
And so let's scare people a little bit. If you die and you don't have a will or you don't have a trust, what happens?
The state has predetermined the distribution that you will get, and that may or may not be what you desire. If your parents are still alive, they'll inherit a portion. Then it goes to your kids. So there
Parents first.
Parents get a portion.
A portion, okay.
Because the state doesn't want to say, oh, we know what happens in every circumstance, right? So it's those type of moments where it is important to make sure your wishes are clearly articulated. And keep in mind, if it's left in probate or via a will or intestate, at age 18, your heirs are getting a check
The entire amount,
of whatever their portion is.
their portion is, but the state determines that.
Yep.
And depending on what state you live in, you can go research that or look that up because every state may be different. But there is a distribution plan for every state for those that die without estate documents.
Yeah, and you can actually live in one state, have a will in another state, and then you have some complications there as well.
Absolutely.
Right. So if your parents or your children live in another state, people need to research whether or not they still have to go to probate because they're two different.
Yeah, and a lot of times
addresses.
it depends on where the asset is held. So where you see it a lot in Michigan is people that buy that second home in Florida.
Yes.
The rules in Florida may be a little bit different than Michigan, so you need to understand how that asset is governed.
No, I mentioned earlier that people are living a lot longer. I think the fastest growing age today in the country is people are 85 years and older, which is great news, but the quality of life may not be there and the financial security may not be there. What would you suggest people do to make certain that they take care of themselves first, long-term care, what their needs might be? So you're 50, you're trying to do an estate or a trust, and you're taking care of your kids or your heirs. What about you and what you might need? How do you manage that?
I'll even go back to the first question is, what does a financial advisor do?
Yes.
I think a lot of times we have to care for ourselves first if we truly care about our heirs and the next generation.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's difficult when you think there's money coming in to spend on things like home improvements or my children's education, only to find out that my parents need that long-term care stay. So I think it's important to look at what is my health care going to be, not just my travel and all the things we all enjoy doing in retirement,
Right.
but what's health care going to cost me, or what is that potential of a long-term care stay going to cost me?
Is it a good idea then to have a long-term care insurance plan? I know people who do and they swear by it, and others wish they had, and are they very expensive, and how young is too young or old is too old to get one?
Yeah, I think you have to start with defining what the risk is, right? And once you understand what that risk is, then you come back to cost. No different than talking about, is hiring a financial advisor expensive? Some may be, some may not be. Well, what is your need? I think it's vital to take those steps to understand what is it going to cost to cover all of that risk or a portion of that risk? And then how do I help protect my situation, as an example of, what if I don't ever use it? Can I recover some of that money? And that portion of the industry is changing very rapidly to really allow some hybrid options where people don't lose that coverage if they choose to avoid that risk.
Because that's been a deterrent for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
They're thinking, I may never need this, I may die before that, or my children will take care of me or whatever, and then I won't get that money back. And that's been a deterrent for a lot of folks.
Well, in the 30 years we've been doing this, we've seen clients we've helped 30 years ago get premium notices that cost continues to ratchet up year after year at the time when they're most in need and their least capacity to cover that cost.
And if you're getting long-term care insurance, when should you start thinking about that? Because it's cheaper, isn't it, the younger you are?
For sure. Yeah, I would say that somewhere in that 40 to 50.
I shouldn't say cheaper, less expensive. It's not,
40 to 50 years old is a good time to start looking at that, of what is the risk exposure, and do I want to transfer that risk to an insurance company versus bearing it myself.
Yeah, and if I can add too, you referenced people living longer. That's probably one of the biggest factors that have to be determined, because we may be living longer, but are we always living healthier? And it becomes more expensive, the longer we live. So
if someone's out there, they're listening and they're thinking, well, if I just take that money that I would give for long-term care and put it aside for my own long-term care in a separate account, I'd be much better off. Is that true or not true?
Absolutely. And you're probably better off than half of the population that doesn't even want to acknowledge that risk exists. That's better than having no plan.
But having a plan would be better than trying to save for your own plan, because the plan will cover a lot more than your
in Michigan,
cost.
you're talking $6,000 to $10,000 a month, depending on the level of care you need. Most folks don't have that just set aside where they don't need to ever count on that again.
Right. And something about setting it aside, too. You can always dip into it.
For sure.
You see that new car, that new vacation, you can start dipping into that again. So what's the one piece of advice that people are listening right now, if they don't have a will, they don't have a trust, what's the first thing that they should do after listening to this program?
I think we've said it, embedded in all of the things we said, is start with, what are your goals? What is it you hope to achieve? What does that overall plan look like from now until when you expect your life expectancy to be? And do you have a plan to really go attack those next 5, 10, 20, 30 years of your life. Once you can see that big picture, it's much easier to then drill down into individual issues. I would say the second component of that is, we've talked about a lot of things today. Income tax is probably the number one expense for all of us sitting, talking about it or looking at it. Income taxes are going to be the driver of most people's success or failure in retirement. Do you have a plan to combat not only where things are at, but where are they going as it relates to that overall picture and plan?
If I can add one thing, is I think it's voicing your desires. Whether you have a significant other or you have your children, or maybe it's even your parents, if you're blessed enough to still have them, is let people know what you want. And I think that's really, really important when we talk about medical directives, because a lot of times we're sitting there trying to make a decision for someone we've never had the conversation with. So I think start with a spouse, a loved one, a significant other. Start talking about what's important to you.
And that's so important, because we've seen that with celebrities and other folks too, where there just wasn't any kind of document expressing their wishes. We always use Thanksgiving when families get together and just kind of chat when you're having fun about what your desires are, whether you want a do not resuscitate, or whether you want long-term care, what you have. But passwords, even being able to access someone's account and who does that. And I'll tell you, a lot of older adults and young people too, but particularly adults, they don't want to give their password to anybody. And so something happens and then they can't access the account. And so having a will or a trust helps to alleviate some of that too, because you can designate power of attorney, durable power of attorney.
For sure.
And can you do that in a will also? Or do you need a trust? Or designate who you want to have access to your accounts, and that's more in a will. You can have okay. Is there a lot of people go online and look at wills? I know someone who did that. They think their will is lock solid, but good idea, bad idea to find them online and fill them out.
I think again it starts with your situation. Those things wouldn't be online if there wasn't a use for them. The more complex your situation, or the more complex your desires for what you want to do with your money, I think hiring a professional to help you guide or navigate, especially tax laws, are really important. But I would much rather have somebody do something online than to have nothing at all or not have shared their wishes to their loved ones.
Was it Aretha Franklin that a year later they found her will inside the sofa cushion underneath but they didn't. So you got to let people know. You got to talk to folks and let them know.
Definitely.
Yeah, but folks are afraid to let you know where their documents are, because they're a little suspect.
I can go on WebMD and find out how to do brain surgery too. I'm not sure I would execute that, right?
Nor would I hire you to execute that. Yes.
So to Shannon's point, the information is there. Whether or not you choose that to actually be the ultimate execution of your wishes, that's that line you have to decide whether or not to cross over.
And what if you want to donate money to a nonprofit or to a particular organization that you've been involved with? What's the best way to go about doing that?
You can leave specific designations on accounts. You can leave it in your will, or you could leave it in a trust. Most of the time, the driver of that is income tax. So while alive, you can actually use accounts like a donor advised fund as an example of something you can implement to leave money after you pass, but get the benefit in using it while you're alive. That gives you a current benefit today from income tax, but then also executes your long-term wish of leaving money to charitable organizations.
Now, you mentioned income tax about 6 or 7 times. Talk about the importance of that, because that could really derail what someone thinks they're going to inherit in terms of how it was set up, right? And how much taxes they'd have to pay on that. Talk a bit more about the income tax component of the gift that you leave behind.
I think it's important to understand the income tax component of income first, then the gift second.
Okay.
So I believe we're in a situation or scenario or environment right now where income taxes are at or near the lowest they've been for most retirees in all of their working and retired life. As we sit and look across the horizon of where taxes are going to go in the next 5, 10, 15 years, most folks believe tax rates are going up. We have this thing called a federal deficit, and it tends to go only in one direction. How we combat that federal deficit over time usually comes down to tax rates going up. So for folks that are desiring to leave assets to their heirs, as their tax rate goes up, that means the IRS or the government becomes a much larger beneficiary of those accounts than they are today.
There's so much good information here. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing this. Hopefully there's information here, news that you can use, but bottom line, make certain that you have a plan and that you have a professional helping you to execute that plan. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Tracy Anderson with Impart Alliance at Michigan State University. Today I'm here with Dan and Jennifer Digman from Mount Pleasant. We're going to talk about the shortage of direct care workers here in Michigan. At present, our state needs at least 36,000 more direct care workers to meet the current needs of our state.
And that's a big number. I mean, and people need that care to stay in our home. And it's important that not only do we need that, but we need politicians, we need government officials, legislators to support us staying in our home and funding programs like this. And it's very important to the quality of my life and Dan's life.
I think that's the big thing. That's one of the things that really allowed us as two people with MS to get married, is knowing with the Michigan My Choice waiver program and funding for that allows and provides for direct care workers to come into our home, and so that we can continue living in our home and contribute to the local community. And I think that that's the big thing for legislators, is we always come down and advocate for state funding to continue supporting this program that allows us, and it's not just us, I mean, think of everybody throughout the state that benefits from something like this.
The workers benefit and the people on the other side. It's a win-win for both of us.
If you had a message for our legislators, what would that be?
Keep the funding, support direct care workers, support people with disabilities.
Thank you both. To learn more about Impart Alliance and our advocacy around direct care, please visit our website at impartalliance.msu.edu.
Today we have Dr. Michael Schaefer with us. Dr. Schaefer, you are well known throughout the country regarding your work with memory care and dementia. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this work.
You know, my background is in neuropsychology. It's the study of brain behavior relationships, which truly fascinate me. Why does a brain that's missing a part have the capacity to do certain things? So that's very interesting to me. And then the application of that, thinking about older patients, thinking about the diseases, memory conditions as an example. And that's really what led me into my work in community and thinking about developing a foundation that specifically tried to provide assistance for caregivers, knowing that there's a great deal of support for individuals who have Alzheimer's disease, whether that's through medication development, other national institutes. But my focus really of late has really been, how do you give back to your community? How do you help people? And so developing a foundation that aims to do that, to provide support for the caregiver, has really been of interest to me lately.
And what has surprised you about that work?
What surprises me about that, particularly thinking maybe let's say over the last decade, is how much emphasis and burden is placed on the family members, how much they have to give now.
And if we didn't have those family members, there's 1.7 million unpaid family caregivers in the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
That really helps to release the burden for Michigan
right.
in the finance.
It's its own crisis for sure.
Yeah, we need more of them. To be continued. There's so much more that you can share with us. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing, for the work that you do and that you've done throughout the years here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dental hygiene is so important. But if you don't have good dental hygiene and you don't take care of your teeth, Dr. Skari, what can happen?
Well, not taking care of your teeth definitely leads to a lot of other issues. Apart from losing teeth to periodontal disease, which is one of the leading factors of why people lose teeth is their gum disease. That has also been shown to coronary diseases, to heart disease, to Alzheimer's, and also to pulmonary diseases. So taking care of your teeth definitely should be one of the most issues that should be on our checklist for our, when it comes to our yearly checkups, when it comes to our to-do things, as we are aging,
Right.
and as we are taking care of our health.
And how often should people visit the dentist?
A minimum twice a year, and some people need to see the dentist about 4 times a year, depending upon their, of course, their problems. That is for just their checkups. When, of course, they have some other issues that need to be dealt with, they need to make sure that they are taken care of while the problem is still small,
Right.
because, of course, the solution is going to be small.
And you talked about some major issues: coronary, Alzheimer's. A lot of older adults are suffering from those issues, and it could be because of their oral hygiene.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so we need to make certain that they visit the dentist twice a year and that they take good care of your teeth. And what would you recommend they do in terms of at-home care for their teeth?
Well, of course, brushing, flossing, and
Happy birthday song.
and of course, they need to be also need to be checked because of any medications that
Yes,
they are
yeah.
on. They might be affecting their oral health as well.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
No one is immune from fraudsters. If you are a victim of a scam or an attempted scam, Brenda, what should someone do?
The first thing you should do is notify your local authorities. Even if it did not happen, you want the local authorities to be aware that these types of scams are happening in your community so they can be on top of it. And then we ask you to notify AARP's Fraud Watch Network, because we track scams by zip codes so that we can also alert our audiences that this is happening in a particular community.
I love that. People don't understand. They can type in their zip code and find out what scams are going on in their neighborhood. And people can do that by accessing
Our Fraud Watch Network. Just call the number.
to call the number and or go on the website
Or
as
go
well
online.
and type in your zip code. And if someone is doing a scam like replacing your windows in that neighborhood and it's going around, it's right there. And the Attorney General office also is another resource.
Yes,
Correct.
you want to make sure the local authorities know what's going on.
And do you know what some of the top scams are?
Yeah, the top scams are imposter scams. Sweepstakes scams still exist. They're old as dawn, but sweepstakes scams are still out there, and crypto scams are out there. Those financial scams are out there.
How can you tell what's real and what's not real?
You don't have to tell. If it doesn't feel good and doesn't smell right, somebody's offering you something for nothing, just hang up the phone. Just disconnect from the email.
You know, we used to say if it sounds too good to be true,
It's not true.
it's not true.
That's
so we want to
right.
make
That's
certain
right.
people protect themselves and don't be in such a hurry to respond. So make certain that people protect themselves and call or verify. Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Great information. Hopefully there was news that you can use. Be sure and share it with others. Thank you.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.